Join the show tonight. He's the national columnist for D2Football.com, a Bloomsburg alum, and a man who's pumped for this game on Saturday. He's been covering it for a long time. Chuck Bitner joining us tonight. What's going on, man?
Kobe, so much going on this week, but I'm really glad to be here to talk some D2 football with you.
I'm pumped to have you. And before we get into any of it, can we talk a little bit about the immaculate setup you've got going on behind you? A dude who is pretty, look at all these different squads you're repping behind you.
They're all D2, every one of them.
Yeah.
There's a lot of different conferences, a lot of different teams represented, and the decals are all D2 helmet decals as well. So, yeah, I'd like to say it's all just by accident, but yeah, it's a very carefully cultivated background that we have here. Thankfully, the work colleagues and the people I work with professionally, they get to see the same thing. So it works for all occasions.
That's funny. How do you get your hands on all those? They're all customs or what? You just get a decal and you're putting them on?
Some of those are custom. Some of those I did myself through a very rudimentary cutting out a car decal and sticking on a helmet. And there are a few schools that will manufacture their own and sell them at bookstores. So there's also a few customizers you can find out there on eBay. So occasionally I'll throw a few bucks at somebody to customize one. But there's actually a few others that aren't even up there on the wall yet. So it makes for a fun collectible for sure.
I love it, man. I love it. It's unique, it's character, and I think it's all about what we're doing here at this level. Well, let's talk before we get into the big game. Talk about the semifinal matchups a little bit before moving on to this weekend. Both these teams winning, they did it decisively, albeit in very different ways. I think you could probably argue, instead of talking about what we already know about both these squads, what's something they put on tape Saturday that maybe is different from what we've seen in weeks 1 through 14, 15 from these guys.
Well, I think with Harding, you kind of know who they are and what they do, right? Their identity is pretty well known. It's a very physical and fast defense, and offensively, their system is what it is. That flex bone it's a bit of a throwback, but there's a lot of modern elements to that as well. And I think the interesting thing about the results from last weekend is that really the way those two games played out is kind of the opposite of what I expected them to be. I thought Lenore-Rhyne would have a little bit more for Harding. I thought that would be a close game for probably at least 3 quarters or so. And I really thought Manns would just run away from Kutztown. I really did. And Kutztown really made them work for it. I don't think at any point Kutztown was really a threat to win that game, and I didn't expect them to be, but they made Manns really work for that. And I do think that Kutztown showed, if you really can commit to getting some pressure on John Matocha, that's what it's going to take to beat them. Now, they couldn't do it consistently enough, but there were a lot of plays where they were able to get off the field by having some success on first and second down, getting pressure on Matocha, playing tough against the run. So I think that there was enough that you could really see out of that, Kobe, and really also going back to the Central Washington game as well, that there's a path to beating Manns,
absolutely,
if you can really be physical on defense. So I think it makes the matchup this coming week really exciting.
Yeah, and they did something that a lot of teams aren't able to do. I heard you talk about it on your guys' show on Sunday, which was limiting McLeod on the outside. And I think there are 2 takeaways from that. One is that he does have an Achilles heel between him and Matocha, that connection we've seen all year. It's not an automatic 150 burger every single time they step out on the turf. The other piece that, from a mind standpoint, could be really encouraging is that even when he's not having a day, you've got dudes across the field that are going to step up and have this just crazy production. I don't want to say out of nowhere, because these dudes have been contributing, but a guy like Sheila comes out and has this probably the best game of his career. So as an Ordigger fan, it feels really nice to know that maybe as a backup plan, even if it is, there's some depth out there, and there's other guys that can step up and be just as beneficial for them offensively.
Well, that's what makes them so dangerous, right? There's just so many different ways that they can burn you. And, Max McLeod's been one of the best and most productive wide receivers in D2 all season. But Kutztown really kind of had a blueprint going back to their 2 matchups with Slippery Rock. They were very committed to not letting Kyle Sheets, who's Slippery Rock's, NFL prospect receiver. They were very committed to not letting him burn them and be a big factor in the game. Now, if you're going to do that as a defense, you can be successful at that, but that's going to open up some opportunities somewhere else on the field. And of course, Manns was really able to find out where else is Kutztown going to be vulnerable, and they were able to get a lot of matchups with Sheely that were very favorable. And the thing is, Kobe, the way these guys have played together for so long, that kind of communication that they have with each other, where even if Sheely's covered, the way you're going to intentionally underthrow the ball or back shoulder that and put it in a spot where he expects it to be, but you get the defender out of position. They were just so successful at doing that.
That's the rapport that, you know, a lot of guys don't get to have, especially in this day and age where it's not, oh, you come in with your boys year one and now we're all fifth years graduating together. Hell, like that does not happen. Like that just does not happen as much anymore. Credit to Manns. They've done a great job of cultivating, getting the guys that they want. It fits not only their scheme offensively, but just their culture as a squad over there. And obviously being in the demographic that they are as a school, like there is a very limited pool of guys that really can come in and buy into that kind of program. But credit to them. They've done a great job of the dudes that can play ball and are going to get a great degree from that kind of quality of school. It feels like they've swallowed all of them up.
Well, and it's a little bit of a throwback or an old school way of doing it, that building your team through culture and consistency. And obviously Harding really does the same thing. But,
yeah,
you know, in today's college football, you know, we focus so much on accumulating talent, and it's the rapidity that teams can go build through transfers and things like that. It's really changed the way we construct college football rosters. But with Manns, it's very much the old way of doing it, getting high school recruits, getting them in there. They stay for, gosh, at this point now, some have been there for 6 years through the COVID era. That's kind of an older way of doing it. And boy, look at the results there. And really, you could say the same thing for Harding, because that's a culture where they bring in high school athletes and bring them up through their system for years. And now you get to this point where both teams are 14-0.
It's fun to see. And it almost like watching these guys, it's almost like you get invested in watching these guys. So you see the passion they play with. I love the post-game videos in the locker room, and they got their, it's like the engineer swag surf going on in Club Dub back there, which is pretty cool. But I'm going to ask you this about both the squads, but for Manns first, if there's one game for Harding that in some type of hypothetical world, they've got to sit down, they only get to watch film from this game, what is it on Manns' timeline and their campaign this year, and what takeaways, why?
Well, I think if you were the Harding staff and you only got to watch tape on one Manns game this year, you're certainly not going to look at any of their RMAC games, because they won their RMAC schedule by an average of 56-9. So you're not going to look at any of those. And certainly, here's the thing to consider is that even though the GAC plays a closed schedule, so there's no out of conference games, these two teams do have a common opponent, and that's Grand Valley State. So if you're Harding, you know how you matched up with Grand Valley State.
Yep.
So that's a really good barometer. Now, you know, they played back in Manns in week one. So that's almost a whole season ago at this point, but it's still the same team, still the same roster, a lot of the same philosophies. So you're certainly going to go back and look at that game and see how did we match up in certain areas against Grand Valley? How did Manns match up against them? And that's a really good barometer for you to look at. Also, it's the team that came the closest to beating them. So you want to kind of see how did they do that? They also did something that no one else has been able to do, which is erase a fourth quarter deficit. You know, Manns had a 2-score lead in that game back in week one. Grand Valley actually came back and scored 2 fourth quarter touchdowns, which is something that nobody's really able to do against Manns, is really punch back that late in the game. So there's a lot of takeaways that you would want to examine from that game.
I remember sitting down watching that on week one, and we were spoiled because that was one of the better ones this season. And, you know, they go up and get that onside kick, and you're like, wait, no, like that's not supposed to, like this team is, that's not supposed to happen. But they did it, and they did it again, and they really clawed their way back into that one. Now, this Manns team, you talk about the runners-up last year, it feels like this squad, they've improved in multiple areas, obviously, but the front seven defensively for them, their physicality in the line of scrimmage, to me as an outsider, feels somewhere that they've very much improved. A lot of the talk in the offseason was how they maybe didn't match up as well against a very physical GLIAC opponent in Ferris State. Obviously, the first instance of proving the people wrong was in week one against the dominant GLIAC foe in Grand Valley. Talk about that defense and how they've really answered and I guess stepped up to the call this year, and if that bodes well for them, I would assume so, against a Harding squad that's very run-heavy.
Yeah, I think that's sort of an interesting element to this game on both sides of it, is how good the defenses are. Because, I mean, we know historically offense is what gets headlines. You know, defense wins games, defense wins championships, but offense will always win the headlines, right? It's just always more, it's always more fun to show highlights of offensive plays, talk about it, socialize it. And obviously both bring a lot to the table offensively. But I think this game is probably about the defenses, and neither team is where they are without some extremely good defensive play. I mean, Harding doesn't beat Grand Valley without an elite defense. Manns does not get to 14-0 without an elite defense. And really no one has had a lot of success against that Manns defense, including some teams that are pretty darn good offensively, going back to teams like Angelo State, They made Augustana look completely incompetent. That's a very
Yes.
good NSIC champ that they completely humbled. Western Colorado had absolutely nothing for them. Pueblo had nothing for them. Those are teams that bring a lot to the table, and Mines really kind of made them look silly, and it's because of the physicality that they play with on defense. And I think that the thing that bodes well for them is if you kind of look at that Grand Valley game, again, both teams are going to look at that and kind of figure out how they matched up against Grand Valley and see how that extrapolates to matching up with each other. Mines is going to look at how Grand Valley was able to really shut down Harding's offense, or at least kind of really limit them for most of that game.
Albeit, like, other than the one drive, right, that they got back into the Harding that we've seen, which is probably the only worrying thing for Mines and their offense, is the fact that they might not be seeing a lot of the grass on Saturday if everything goes Harding's way. They keep them on the sideline. But the running back position also feels like a spot where they've, again, not that they were bad before, but certainly added depth, getting to the transfer portal, which is a little bit outside of their typical way of acquiring that talent. Talk about that room. I feel like between Roper, Walker, those kind of guys, they've added another really dangerous element to this offense.
Well, and that was really the biggest question mark that I had about Mines coming into the season, because they lost one of the best players in school history, Mike Zeman, graduated last year, and it's not just the productivity but the leadership that he brought to that offense. I thought that was going to be a really big loss for them to overcome. And certainly just with the senior leadership that's already there, they had that aspect of it covered. And then, they kind of had to go to a couple different players to backfill the productivity that Zeman had, but they've been able to do it very successfully. And it's worked really well for me. Roper's a very good inside runner, but he can do a lot of things. And it was a little bit different for them to bring in somebody from, from a transfer route. But boy, he certainly has added a lot to that unit.
I love it. And, we're talking run game. Let's talk about that flex bone, the triple option that has been, partially myself to blame, has been all the talk on this Bison squad. But hey, sometimes, it's fun, it's exciting, it's different from, at least on the national scene, where we see a lot of the same style of offense. But once again, the defense not feeling, at least from my end, not getting the credit they deserve. When you talk about offenses like Grand Valley State, Central Missouri, the gauntlet that is Super Region 3 coming out of that region, this defense has stepped up, and they are suffocating in the box. I think they do a great job of generating pressure. They've been able to keep a lot of quarterbacks off schedule. Again, going through guys like Peterson, Zabrowski, who we've seen put up ridiculous numbers this year, and a lot of bend but not break out of this Bison D.
Harding's playoff run is really impressive when you look at the teams that they've had to play. So it's 3 conference champions and 3 teams that had exceptional records, a lot of success, and really good offensive weaponry to bring to the table. So 3 conference champions, 3 very different types of opponents, and 3 very different games that they played. And they found ways to win all 3 of those. So I think it's very impressive what they've been able to do. The way they shut down Lenoir-Rhyne, I did not expect that. LR is a very diverse offense. There's a lot of different things that they can point to, throwing the ball, running the ball, and Harding just had the answers for all of it. Grand Valley was a little bit limited because they had some injuries there, but that was also just a tremendous job of Harding collapsing the pocket, containing the quarterback, and getting pressure. I actually just rewatched a good bit of that game this morning, and the real difference that the Harding defense made in Grand Valley, beating Grand Valley, was the pressure that they were able to get on the quarterback. Even the plays when they didn't quite get to him, they contained the pocket, they collapsed him, and they hurried the rush, or they hurried the throw a little bit. And that's going to be the key for them with Matoka. Like, nobody's really had a lot of success containing him to the pocket, keeping him from getting outside. And boy, once he gets outside, Kobe, he just improvises. If he buys time, somebody's going to get open. But this might be the defense from the Harding Bisons that can keep him from doing that, keep him contained in the pocket. And if you get some sacks and put them in negative yardage plays, put them behind the sticks, that's what it's going to take.
Yeah, absolutely, man. And, looking at that Lenoir-Rhyne squad, and when I remember they matched up against Valdosta State, who have bounced back after a 1-year hiatus from the dance and come back and with this Sammy Edwards-driven offense. And the conditions for that game obviously played a huge factor. Lenoir-Rhyne, the more multidimensional of the 2 offenses, with a guy like McGee coming out of the backfield in that offensive line unit, that was not the case on Saturday at all. Harding made this team one-dimensional, and that, White back there, he looked uncharacteristically off schedule and maybe making some errant decisions, which was interesting. But looking at Saturday, if you were a betting man, just again in a hypothetical, what's the over-under on how many times Keelan Cole, the ball leaves his hand in the air?
3.
3. Okay. Would you, again, staying in this, living in this hypothetical, are you hitting the over or the under on that?
You know, in a game like this, you have to figure you're going to pull out every trick that you have at some point. So I would actually bet the over on that.
Hammer it. I love it. That's good, man. I'm excited to see, because obviously we've gotten a little taste of it throughout the playoffs. A big one last week against the North Ryan, and they certainly pulled out all the stops. Special teams has obviously been huge for them thus far as well. But a kind of back to get on that topic of the flex bone, that kind of offense, is it something now that we see maybe more of in Division II? And I bring that up because you guys discussed it too, the letter from the Tusculum coach about the private schools, maybe with a little bit of lack of funding and a lot of very valid reasons inside of that. Could this offense and this kind of schematically level the playing field for some of these maybe smaller private schools that don't have, unlike Harding, don't have the same level of funding as these larger public institutions, to give these defenses a different, unique look and maybe doesn't rely on quarterbacks like John Matoka and Zach Zabrowski to get the job done?
I think there's a lot of schools in the lower divisions, Division II, D3, NAIA. I think there's a lot of schools that should take a really close look at it. You know, especially if you're a school that's just under-talented, if you don't have the size, the strength to really compete at the offensive line, one of the ways that you can combat that is through this type of offense. Now, it requires a lot of precision. It requires a lot of study. It requires a lot of discipline. So it's not like it's easy to run, but it is different to run. And it can overcome some mismatch deficiencies. It's one of the reasons a lot of high schools still run it. So, you know, it's interesting that we've seen the migration away from this offense. And by the way, I thought we would never see an option-based offense play for national championship ever again. I didn't think we'd ever see that. So I think it's pretty darned exciting that we are seeing that. I mean, how wild is it that in 2023, a team that is dead last in passing yards is going to play for the national championship?
Hell yeah.
I mean, Harding is, I mean, obviously they lead the nation in rushing yards by like 110 per game, but they are dead last in passing yards.
I love it.
I didn't think we'd ever see a team like that play for national championship again. So I love it. I think it's very exciting. And to your point, I think there's a lot of teams that probably should consider this type of approach to help them maybe get on track. You do something a little bit different. You know, things are cyclical. So maybe this is something that we'll start to see come back in vogue. Who knows?
Everything comes back. Everything's trendy again. It's like all the Gen Zers that bring out the old clothes. Same deal, isn't it?
Yeah.
But we've seen a lot of constants with this Bison squad this year. I think maybe the most potent of them is, if you can't stop the dive, you better stay the hell on the bus, because there is no point in coming out into the field. That's where it obviously starts and even sometimes ends with some of these teams. Can Manns do that? That's probably the best question.
Yeah, you know, that the fullback dive, you know, through those gaps right in those tight gaps in the center, kind of really going right behind the center between the guards. That's where they are so dangerous, because I remember, you know, growing up in the 80s and the 90s, watching teams like Oklahoma and Nebraska and Colorado that ran option offenses. A lot of it was, you know, the quarterback getting outside and then doing the last second pitch. And you're going to see a little bit of that from Harding, but it's really more just the physical running between the tackles that they are so dangerous at, and they wear you down. They just wear you down. And then that's, you know, they're just going to hit you with body blows with Dela Cruz and Keelan in the middle.
Studs.
And then, you know, when you're just beaten up and you're gassed from that, then they're going to get you outside with Spicer. And that's when they're going to hit a home run. So they are extremely dangerous. But, you know, I do think that Harding was a little worried about Grand Valley's speed at the perimeter and their ability to get lateral very, very fast. And I think that's why you saw them so committed to running in the middle with Dela Cruz. And they actually really stayed with that against Lenore Ryan. I don't think that they had some of the same concerns with the speed on the perimeter, but I think that they thought that they could overwhelm Lenore Ryan in the middle of the line, and they were able to do that. So to look at this matchup, I think it's going to be very interesting to see what their approach is, because I don't know that Manns quite has the same level of talent that Grand Valley has. but they do have a lot of the same assets. You know, they
Yeah.
are physical, they do get to the ball quickly, and they tackle well in open space. And that's how Grand Valley was able to be so successful. So I think it will be interesting to see what kind of approach they really kind of go with in this game. And, you know, it's one of those things that, you know, you're gonna know really early. You know, if their offense can work, you're going to know really early. And if it doesn't work, then it's going to be very interesting to see how does Harding adjust if they're not having a lot of success.
If at all, right? Or is it screw you, we've made it this far, I'll be damned if we switch anything now on the national stage. But we talked a lot about that too with our guy Abe Swanson over there being a big part of that, a dude that maybe isn't the largest statured human on the field, but damn it, from sideline to sideline, the dude is making plays all over the place. Some really good athletes. A lot of guys have been able to do that, but I won't keep you much longer. You guys got a pregame show on Saturday. Tell the people what they can expect from you in the game ahead of the kickoff.
Well, we think we have a plan. We think we know what's gonna happen.
Usually how it goes.
We've done this for the last 2 years, so we'll have a couple guys on site in McKinney. We will be broadcasting live from the press area. Probably have a few pre-recorded things in the can as well that we'll air. We'll have some guests live there on site.
Awesome.
And it'll be a lot of fun. We've been able to do this for the last 2 years and really kind of bring the feel of the stadium right before kickoff to the fans. It's something that we don't get to see. You guys did an incredible job at lacrosse, you know, a couple of weeks ago, kind of bringing people right to the event and showing them this is what it's like leading right up to kickoff. And that's what we're going to try to do for the championship game. We'll have some interviews. We'll do our picks. We'll do, you know, kind of let people see the lay of the land of the stadium and take them right up to kickoff. And it should be a great day. Obviously, you know, this weekend coming up, we've got, you know, the D3 championship. I'm excited about that too, to see that back in Salem. NAIA has their championship coming up as well. So it's a huge weekend for small college football fans for sure.
I'm pumped. Talk about the couple guests live. Is Blaster going to be one of those guests?
I don't know that the NCAA permits live mascots for championship events. So
I don't think they do.
I don't think they do, but
damn it, that would be electric.
It'd be a great interview, don't you think? I think we've got a few things lined up. There's a few people that are generally there. I think we typically try to get some advice from Mel Churchma. He was the longstanding coach at Northwest Missouri State. He's usually there. He's just got so much wisdom to share with us about what championship game day is like.
Awesome.
I think Michael Zeman, who I talked about earlier, I think he's planning to be there. We're hoping to grab some time with him and anybody else we can grab a hold of that'll bring some fun insights to the conversation. We'll be happy to bring them on.
Good stuff. Best of luck to you guys. I'll be tuning in, and a lot of people will, but I appreciate your time once again. Thank you for coming on, spitting some knowledge. Have a good rest of your day, man.
My pleasure, Kobe. Thank you so much.
Absolutely. I'll see you. Now we can switch over, talk about the Division III scene. Had two fantastic semifinal matchups, a lot more competitive maybe than the weeks prior. Jimmy, what we see, man?
So we saw the North Central Cardinals punch their third consecutive trip to the national championship.
I believe it actually may be fourth. Obviously, the COVID season is a bit of an asterisk there.
Yeah, certainly. And Wartburg put up a very strong fight, but they just fell a little bit short in this one. 34-27, the final from Wartburg. Luke Lehnen, 222 yards, 3 touchdowns, and an interception. What? Luke Lehnen threw a pick? Are you kidding me? Yeah,
like a very uncharacteristic stat there from Lehnen, who has been near perfect, and obviously he's joining us tonight as well. But even with that being said, the fact that it's crazy for that to even mention is something that's really sweet. The fact, I think myself watching, I got the chance, this is the best time of year is right now because you get to watch all the games because there's not a million different games to watch. So the fact that we're able to watch all these is awesome. He's able to make these throws, dude, and I'm sure you see them rolling out one way and throwing across his body. He makes these very long or very tough throws, appearingly very minimal effort. And it's really impressive to see him move around and extend plays.
Yeah, he's a heck of an athlete. He's got a great arm. I believe he has a history with baseball. I want to say he played at North Central for a bit as well. And that's probably why he's so good at throwing on the run, because you catch a fly ball in center field, you got to curl hop, throw it in. So.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, and then obviously Joe Sacco had a hell of a game as well. 126 yards on the ground, 2 touchdowns, and he's no stranger to finding the end zone and running for a ton of yards. I mean, he's been having games like this all year. I mean, this is not a surprise to anybody. And then Joey Lombardi also had a heck of a game. 4 catches, 161 yards, and 2 touchdowns for the fella. And then, for Wartburg, Niall McLaughlin, pretty solid game himself. 234 yards, 2 touchdowns, and Hunter Klassen, 131 yards on the ground and 2 touchdowns for him. So, like we said, Wartburg was a very formidable opponent, and they gave North Central maybe the best game they've gotten all year. Obviously, you could say lacrosse as well, but this should not be a surprise that Wartburg kept this one close.
Not at all. And the fact that Wartburg came back from what was a pretty heavy deficit to come back and take the lead at one point, one, shows the strength and the quality of that kind of squad. But two, for North Central, if you're a North Central fan, you're a Cardinal fan, it's got to be super encouraging because these guys have not trailed. So to see them this far in the season, to finally face that adversity, if you will. There's so many other things that adversity-wise they've faced this year, but to finally be on the wrong end of the scoreboard for once, to bounce back and continue to play their kind of football, I think is super encouraging for that Cardinal squad. We saw a lot of these clips. Ben Sackler, Ben, right? First name? He got going early. Joe, I'm sorry. He got going early, and I think that was kind of a question mark for me heading into this one. You see the special teams play getting going as well, but that front seven, that front defensively for Wartburg with that star-studded linebacker core, was North Central going to kind of play around these guys early? No, they went right at them out of the get-go. I think that's a super great confidence builder for that offensive line and that unit for North Central, and it certainly paid off. They controlled the pace of play for the most part in that first half especially.
Yep, certainly. And when you control the pace of play, you can do a lot of good things, as we saw. So,
absolutely, yeah. And then you talked about a lot of those individual performers. Almost 5,000 people there in attendance. This place was pretty packed. I know for Wartburg, that's a game that a lot of those guys might not be a part in another contest like that, which is sad to talk about. But that's North Central has been there. This felt like Wartburg's chance to really capitalize. And when you get up like that in the first half and you're able to kind of come back, a late score from North Central puts that one away. But, man, it's going to make this championship, I think, a lot more interesting than people are giving it credit for.
Oh, I certainly agree with you. I know I was talking to one of the North Central fans on Twitter this week about the games. I like to interact with the threads a little bit, so I know there's a lot of very confident North Central fans. Clearly,
yeah, and they have a right to be, obviously, right? They have a right to be after the way they've played.
Yeah,
100%.
So you said there was 5,000 people at that Wartburg North Central game, correct?
Oh, I'm looking at the wrong game. Sorry, 3,500. I was looking at
3,500.
I'm looking at Cortland off Macon, which is closer to 45. So 3,500 people down there in Iowa.
And so I'm looking at the enrollment as of fall 2022. Wartburg has just over 1,000 students.
That's awesome, dude.
So
3 times the student body.
Yeah, that's wild stuff.
That's
man.
Pretty cool. That's pretty cool. Yeah, there was a little bit of controversy. I don't know if you saw about the kind of press situation. Did you see any about that? Yeah, it was. It was an interesting note. And I'll try and pull it up here for people that maybe didn't see it. But I think, there were some complaints about how the people were situated, the visiting media, if you will. But people also have to remember, and there's a great counter argument on top of it, that when ESPN and the bigger productions come in to do these games, this is not just the home team putting on another live stream. This is a nationally telecast game. So there's going to be a much larger and more involved crew. And I think that kind of goes unnoticed a lot of the times. There's so much else going on outside of just the white lines that could determine and make differences in a game like this. As I try to, I'll try and find the one thing they called it out. But it's been fun to watch these broadcasts and not to, no discredit away from the teams that usually do them. But, man, to have some people come on here, a little bit more production of the graphics and those kind of things. With that being said, could the commentators do a little more research on these two teams before they show up and call the game? I was kind of surprised at how little they really knew and how general the terminology and other things they were using during the contest. But maybe that was just me.
Yeah. I know a few guys that could maybe do that instead.
You think?
Yeah, maybe.
that would be something else, dude. And I can't find it right now for whatever reason, the little setup. But North Central going into the championship game, I assume, for all those Cardinals fans like the ones that you had talked about, still have to be very confident, correct?
Certainly, as they should be, so.
Yeah, and that can. Oh, here it is. I got it here, so I'll at least show the people that are watching at home here. So this was a view from inside the away from the media, and there was a little bit of controversy here. It says, if this game was at BW, everyone would have proper space in the press box. Instead, we're currently set to broadcast from the model dorm in an administration building on the other side of the field. This is straight up disrespectful, but the show must go on. So you can see the setup there. And Wartburg has a really cool setup because they have these dorms and things. They have windows directly looking out onto the field. But, you know, I've called games before, Jim. This is not the most ideal place to be on the call. But one of the better quotes, like I said, did mention how there's other broadcasts and other people that come in and kind of take this over. And that is, by all means, probably not even Wartburg's decision. They take it a lot of the equation, and there's just so much other things going on that make it a part of it. But we can switch over and talk about this Cortland Randolph-Macon game if you want to, Bub.
So I, for one, did not see this one coming. I don't know about you.
No,
but,
I'd be lying if I told you I did.
Game being decided by 35 points is just mind-blowing, especially because the underdog, Cortland, was plus 3.5 going to this one, winning by 35 points. Certainly, I mean, I was a very big Randolph-Macon believer, as I'm sure a lot of the college football world was, but obviously Cortland, very, very tough football team, and they showed that on Saturday that they're here to play, and they're ready to play North Central. I have no doubt they're ready to play them.
Oh, absolutely. There's a lot of times where I feel like teams took the field this year and they saw the Cardinals across from them, and they're like, holy shit, like, what do we do now? Lacrosse was not one of those teams. Wartburg, obviously not one of those teams. Cortland will not be one of those squads. There is no fear factor with these guys, and there shouldn't be, right? As good as a squad like North Central is, what do the coaches always say? They always put their pants on one leg at a time, just like every other dude in the morning. But you talk about this Randolph-Macon team coming off the explosive performance at Johns Hopkins. Now they get to host it over there in Virginia. And the rushing attack for the Yellow Jackets we've seen has been a huge calling card of their offense. And we talk about determining the pace of play. They didn't do that at all. See the special teams going here, a big-time punt return for the Red Dragons. That was critical early in the first quarter. But, dude, going into halftime, 35-0. I don't care what kind of running game or rushing attack you have, and they've got a great quarterback over there in Campanale, but it takes it out of the equation. You make the offense one-dimensional. You see you getting pressure here on Campanale in the backfield, already up 14-0. And this game, I think, was just the epitome of a slippery slope.
Yeah. I mean, that's just tough, especially when you build your identity on the run game and you don't even run for 100 yards. Like, you're going to have some trouble scoring points.
There was someone wearing the red and white out on the outside who had quite the day. How about him? The man.
Yeah, Cole Bridges. 12 catches, 145 yards, and 3 touchdowns. He is my Division I next player of the week. I think that is a very appropriate choice. You can chime in if you don't believe so, but I think we'd give him the award this week.
Dude, he was balling. You see one of his 3 touchdowns there, and he showcased a little bit of everything. Really big catch radius. He's able to get that down, get some yards after the catch. And then you see the balance, the way he's able to spin off the tackle right here and get into the end zone. Again, that was one of only 3 on the day for him. And we've talked a lot about J.J. Lapp, the other weapon offensively for them on the outside. Another team that just has weapons across the board. If one is not having the best day in the world, you can bet your ass and a little bit more that another guy is going to step up. And behind it all, boys under center for them has just been an absolute facilitator. The run game from them with Jaden, Fano St. John, like I could just go, right? Like this unit has come together so cohesively at the right time, and getting hot right now in the playoffs is probably the best thing you could ask for from this team, man.
Oh, absolutely. And if they want to win next week, Jaden Alfano St. John's going to have another great game, as he went for 108 and 2 touchdowns last week. So they're going to need to establish the run game early and often against North Central if they want to have a chance to win. And then obviously boys also had a great game, 279 yards, 3 touchdowns. All of them were thrown to our boy Cole Bridges.
Massive.
If I was Zach Boys, I'd probably throw to him a lot too. So.
Yeah, no shit. Yeah, absolutely, man. And looking back at the stats from the Johns Hopkins game, you look at the rushing attack from the Yellow Jackets. Mitchell Johnson went for 144 and 2 tuds. That was his breakout game. Cortland holds him to 24 yards on 8 carries. Now, he did not have the same volume, obviously, out of the backfield, but still, to limit him and the explosive plays, that's what we saw against the Blue Jays, is a couple of them. When you have someone like that who's running the ball so much, they get into that rhythm. All it takes is one play here or there, and they're going to bust it eventually. Cortland never let that happen. They limited the explosive plays. That's what they're going to have to do this weekend, right? Because we've seen North Central, I think the best example of it, that 14-point swing at UW La Crosse, punch the ball out of the end zone, goes from a touchdown to a touchback, and the next play, 80-plus yard touchdown from Sacco. And North Central is able to capitalize on those explosive plays. If you're Cortland's defense this week, that's what you're preaching. And you're not changing your game plan, I feel like, too much. But, man, limit the explosive plays, and you have a really good shot to be in this one.
Yep. And if we're talking keys to the game, similarly to how the lacrosse recipe for a potential victory against North Central, if Cortland does not turn the ball over, I think they're going to win the game. But they cannot turn the ball over. That's the only way they can win this one. I think there's some other ways potentially as well. I shouldn't say the only way, but the most important factor in this one is being able to limit the turnovers to none and obviously controlling the ball and running the ball effectively.
Yeah. Absolutely, dude. And I think worth mentioning as well, that Wartburg defense, man. I mean, people have talked about Owen Grover a lot this year in that linebacker core, but there were some other like really star-studded dudes that I think made a name for themselves this playoff run for the Knights over there, and they certainly will be back in this position, maybe not all the way to the semis, but they're going to be certainly fighting for this kind of spot next year. They're returning a lot, but they do graduate some pretty key players. Defensively, though, it felt like those guys were in there in just about every single play. I watched this one until about the third quarter, then I had to take off. I had some other obligations, but those linebackers, man, felt like they were in there on every single play.
Yeah, and that would be a pretty good assessment because prior to the game against Wartburg, North Central had not allowed under 40 points, and they'd only allowed under 50 points twice. So Wartburg was up to the task, holding them to only 34, which has not been done all year by any other defense that has been defending against North Central. So obviously you got to tip the cap to Wartburg. One of the best defenses in the country, and they showed it on Saturday. So
now, does that affect, I mean, again, who gives a shit because they still got to play the game, but does that affect your spread or your kind of projections heading into Saturday's matchup, coming off a incredible offensive showing, and even though it was still a good offensive showing, technically the worst of the year for the Cardinals?
Yeah. I believe I put out North Central minus 13.5 against Cortland. I might drop it down to 13 or maybe 12.5 just because I was so impressed with Cortland's offensive output. But again, North Central has covered the spread in all but 2 games all season. And they're the last 2 games this year that they played. So they are yet to cover a spread since the second round. So we'll see.
Yeah.
I don't have a spread pick, but I do believe North Central will win the national championship.
Back to back. Be interesting, man. Now, looking at the offense and how they match up with North Central, I know we saw they've got some veteran guys on the outside that North Central does, but looking at that lacrosse game, I know that we got to watch in person, and even a little bit of this most recent matchup, I feel like their outside defensive secondary-wise has been exposed a little bit these last couple games when you get good talent on the outside, guys like Studer, who we watched in person, and a couple other dudes over there from lacrosse. And I'm very curious to see now, looking at this Cortland squad, where you're not really allowed defensively to key in on one guy. They can't take all their resources and allocate them towards JJ Lapp or towards Burgess or these other guys because you're going to get cut up in other different directions. How do they manage that when there's not only one or two? You're not, and again, no discredit to the rest of the lacrosse offense. You're not just defending Keiser Helterbrand and Jack Studer. You have across the board, this feels like a much more balanced offense than maybe the one they saw these last couple weeks. How do they manage that when you can't key in on one star player?
I don't know. I have no idea. To be honest with you, I don't. You'd have to ask the defensive coordinator for Cortland.
Yeah, I probably are.
Because Wartburg did a really good job last week of limiting D'Angelo Hardy, who we know is one of the best players in the entire country. He only had 4 catches last week. That's
crazy.
Yeah, I mean, but obviously, it's gonna be tough to hold him to that kind of a game again. Mm-hmm. So we'll see. We'll see what that.
I think part of it too. You know, you think about it, we talk about how many consecutive trips these guys have made to play in this exact game. I can tell you how many trips Cortland's made in that same time span the last 5 years, right? Like, it's a very different feeling, I would assume. I didn't get the chance to play in that kind of atmosphere. I know you haven't either. But a team like this where you have a whole class of guys that know nothing, basically, but going at least to the national championship, if not winning the whole damn thing, compared to a Cortland squad that has never been in this situation before. Obviously, positives and negatives to both, but I imagine that plays a huge part in this thing for North Central.
You would be correct. You would be correct in that.
Yeah, but yeah, man, I think that's, nothing too crazy to recap or preview about it, but I'm super excited. I think this is going to be something where we find out very early in this one exactly how the pace and what this game is going to dictate offensively for both these squads. Is it going to be an actual shootout, or is it going to be a little bit more of a stingier competition? I think the difference in this one is special teams. You saw Cortland get the big special teams punt return for the touchdown here against Randolph-Macon, excuse me. And then you look at against La Crosse, when North Central was maybe struggling a little bit more than they're used to. What got them out of it? The special teams play, I think, was massive. So whoever has, I think, the first big special teams play that kind of determines the possession or even a score of the game, I'm giving them a heavy edge. North Central, I definitely would have to ride with as far as my pick going into this one. A lot can change between now, Monday, and Saturday when we're recording this thing. But I would agree with you. I think I would take them to win this one, but we shall see, my friend.
We will. We will see.
I'm excited about it, though. I think that's all I got for you, Jim. It's been a relatively quick one, but all the stuff we need to know, man.
Yep. Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. I will see you, brother, and I'll talk to you, obviously, before the game on Saturday. Joining us tonight from the D3 scene, this man, he's playing for it all on Saturday. He's led his Cardinals on yet another undefeated season up to this point. Looking to keep it going, the quarterback for North Central, Luke Lehnen. What's up, man? How are you doing?
Doing good. How are you doing?
I'm pumped, brother. I'm pumped. It's good to have you on here. We've talked a lot about you on this particular show. Have yet to be graced by your presence on this show. It's about time. It's overdue is actually what it is.
I'm just happy to be on here. Thanks for the opportunity.
We got is that a playoff mustache or an all-the-time mustache that we're rocking?
Oh, it's playoff only. I don't rock this outside of the playoffs. So
I think I didn't notice until maybe like the Trinity game when I was watching that, and they cut to a close up, and I was like, oh, I didn't know if that was a thing or not. I love it, dude.
Strictly playoffs.
I love it. No, rock it with confidence, dude. But you guys have a lot of confidence, obviously, because you've been in this situation before. Your fourth consecutive trip, maybe not you in particular, to the Stag Bowl for the Cardinals. You only is italicizing my little rundown here. Your third trip to the national stage. Damn near it's got to be an exception or, expectation at this point for you guys, man.
Yeah, it's definitely one of our goals. I mean, it's everybody's goal every year, but we have different goals set. One, of course, to win a conference championship, but then that next step is to win a national championship, which we were lucky enough to do last year. But yeah, Stag Bowl is definitely an expectation for us. Of course, we had to work our way up to it, but definitely something that we expect to get to by the end of the year.
I mean, you guys have certainly had to work your way up to it. You look at this year's run compared to even last year's run, and it's not a disservice. I think you talk about, any of the teams you played last year, but let's be honest, a lot of those games were not nearly as competitive as the contests we've seen here the last couple weeks when you look at Wartburg and La Crosse and some of these other games. But the common denominator in all these is that you guys have found a way to win. So talk about, I guess, what's different about this year, and I'm assuming being on the road for the majority of it's got to be a big portion of it.
Yeah, being on the road was a little different, especially when you're going to play those top caliber teams like La Crosse and Wartburg. I mean, home games are nice just so you don't have to travel and do all that stuff, but it doesn't make too much of a difference. I know Wartburg made a little bit of difference just because of their student section behind the end zone for sure, just being loud. Hard to communicate sometimes just because they were screaming so much. But yeah, this year compared to last year, just not having that home advantage all the time, and like you said, maybe playing a few tougher teams than we did in past years. But yeah, nothing that we weren't prepared for.
Yep.
We knew when we saw the opening quad, like the seating for the bracket, and we saw the quadrant we were in and who we'd have to face in the future if we did continue to win. And we knew it was gonna be a battle, but like I said earlier, nothing we weren't prepared for. I knew that the guys that we have, like, I'll take them any day over anybody else.
Hell yeah.
I was confident that we'd make it through. I just knew it'd be more of a battle than years prior.
Hey, I got to see Gerard and them boys, that front five up in person there when we come down to La Crosse, and I'd run behind them. You know what I mean? I wouldn't be picky about that. So I hear you, man. But how is the mindset changed for you guys, if at all, this year? Again, when we talk about comparing it, because you guys can't exactly claim the underdog role, I don't think, quite yet. But I would imagine still just another chip or two to add onto that throwing shoulder of yours.
Yeah, I think it's more of a chip on our shoulder. Just when we saw we weren't a one seed in our quadrant,
Yeah.
being like defending national champions, not being able to have that home field advantage. Definitely a chip on our shoulder. We didn't let it uh, have too much of an effect on us just because we were just focusing on, hey, it doesn't matter where we'll play, who we're playing, we'll play you anywhere. Just our goal is just to get the job done in the end. So we didn't let it play like a huge part in our playoff journey.
No, absolutely. And that, at least to me, watching you play, which I've gotten to do a little bit now over the course of this year, feels like kind of the way that you play. You're not a guy that's going to be this roller coaster of emotions throughout a contest. Try to stay even keel for those guys, and every play you kind of approach the same. With that being said, you make a big play, you got a little bit of swagger to you out there.
Yeah, I like to show some emotion
Yeah.
after big plays. Just get the boys going. Celebrate with my guys on the sideline
Hmm.
or Ethan Greenfield. He helps coach. He was on the team with me 3 years before he graduated, but
Yeah.
just seeing him, he's one of my really good friends. Just celebrating with him, coming off the field, and all the other coaches and teammates I have. It's fun getting to do that with the guys.
Absolutely, dude. There's a balance there, right? Because as the quarterback, obviously you can be the catalyst for a lot of that energy and that excitement, but also there's certainly times, like we talk about, of trying to be that level-headed, that cool, calm, and collected. You do a really good job of that. But let's talk about that Wartburg game. You obviously knew going into that one going to be a great contest. Talk about the defensive side over there for that Knights defense, man. The linebacker core, a lot of people had talked about, and just the whole game, I think in general, was built up to be this almost pseudo-national championship because the expectations for the other side of the bracket have been different since Mount Union got knocked out. But going into that one, you guys obviously, it was just as competitive as it chalked up to be. They take a late lead, and I wanted you to talk about the adversity you guys faced there because it's not something you faced a lot in recent history, so got to be a really encouraging piece to see your squad rally behind and not be phased.
Mhm. Yeah, we knew coming into that game that they were going to be really physical. They had Owen Grover at Mike linebacker,
Hell yeah.
one of the best in the nation, if not the best linebacker in the nation at our level. But we knew they were going to be physical, and even when we got up on them 20-0, we knew they were going to be a team that stays in the game and fights and claws back. We knew they weren't just going to roll over and die. We knew we had to stay on our game, keep our foot in the gas, and we did slip up in the third quarter. I think we almost had like 5 straight 3-and-outs, I think. Mostly due to me making some bad decisions, but besides that, once we did start to trail, it was good to see how our guys responded. I think that's important. Of course, you don't want to be in that moment where you are trailing. Like
Yeah.
nobody likes to trail, but you do learn some lessons from it. Just seeing our guys respond, offense and defense. Zach Orr making a huge play, getting that
Oh yeah.
interception, got the momentum going. I know I was sitting on the sideline by the heater, uh, kind of like this is hard to watch. Like we're kind of struggling on offense. Like something's got to change, and then next play, Zach Orr makes the interception. I'm jumping around, sprinting onto the field. Like, okay, let's go. This is our chance to. This is what we needed. So, so yeah, just trailing late in the game like that, just seeing how our guys respond and learning how to overcome adversity like that was definitely important for us.
Hey, better late than never as far as when it comes to some of those lessons, man. And yeah, that was obviously a huge one. And reading the box score to see a turnover from your guys' end, I thought was a mistake maybe by the SID. Found out no, it was not. No, but I watched the game. But you extending the plays back there has become, I think, an even larger part of your game. Much in part to the fact that your offensive line is quite literally the personification of a wall. They give you a good amount of time back there. Even when you do have pressure, it's coming off the edge. You're well aware of it. You're able to get out of there and make plays. How do you simulate a lot of that in practice? Because, man, Jimmy and I were talking, those throws that you're making out on the outside, you're making look effortless, maybe thrown across the body. I know there's a couple OCs maybe getting a little squeamish on those, but damn it, you make it work, dude.
Yeah, I know like my dad always growing up, he always told me never throw the ball back across the middle late. So I'm sure he was also acting like OCs around the country and they saw it. But Yeah, it's really just like we practice the way we play. We practice scrambling during practice. Our coaches set us up in bad situations. Like if we have a certain protection and they bring a blitz that we can't pick up just simply because we don't have enough people,
Yeah.
we put in our practice plan so that when a game comes, it's not something we haven't seen before. So that one where I did throw across the middle, I saw the guy coming up and I knew we didn't have anybody for him, just the way our protection was set. So I knew I was gonna have to beat him on the outside. But yeah, it's just stuff that we practice and happens in the game uh, every so often. So nothing that I haven't seen before. So it's almost like second nature, but we do practice it a lot. And our receivers do a really good job of knowing when to find the open space in the defense or knowing when I'm going to start running and then start to block people. So our guys do a great job with the scramble drill.
Yeah, switching into that, and you talk about those guys on the outside when it clicks for them, and they either get up, get out, come across the field with you, or like you said, turn around and get hands on a body downfield. That's I think an underrated trait of a lot of receivers, of that knowledge and I guess game sense of knowing when and where to do that and how to approach that. You being able to build up the rapport with a lot of these guys over the last couple of years certainly helps you guys in that area. But moving on to Cortland, you're going to watch a lot of film on their defense, I'm sure. I'll tell you firsthand that offense has been dialing some shit up here the last couple weeks. Looks like maybe a little bit of a fireworks show on Saturday.
Yeah, they're definitely hot right now. Just looking at their past 2 weeks that they've had, their offense looks great on film. Just seeing like some of the highlight videos. I don't get all the offensive film, and
Yeah.
I'm not spending time looking at that. But like over the weekend, I looked at a couple of highlight videos of them, and yeah, they got some explosive dudes, receivers, really fast guys. Their quarterback has been phenomenal in this postseason. But yeah, I think it should be a really good game. It's exciting that it's like their first time getting to play in the Stag Bowl.
Yeah.
So they'll definitely have some fire. They're not going to back down. They're not going to give up. Their defense is tough. They have a tough defense. Got some good linebackers, some D linemen that we'll have our eyes on. But yeah, it should be a good game.
Nothing you haven't seen, obviously, as far as the defense is concerned. And when you talk about that offense, not the first high-powered one you guys have taken on. I think I go back to that dismantling of Trinity, who by all means was a very quality football team. They came up there to Illinois, and your defense had a day with that and forced a lot of really uncharacteristic turnovers for a guy like Horn back there that has been super efficient all year. And then you go to lacrosse, where Helterbrand, Studer, those kind of guys, you're able to obviously not take them out of the game, but bend, don't break, and they make some of those major plays in the red zone to slow things down. So, again, not the first time you guys have faced something like that, and obviously, going into this one, they're going to be dialing up all kinds of pressures because that's what it comes down to, is getting you off schedule and trying to make those errant throws. But it'll definitely be fun to watch. But you alluded to it. That's what I want to talk about, is the fact that you guys have quite literally been there, done that, and they have not. And that's just kind of the simple fact of it. What does that do playing into this? And I guess, what do you remember about your first experience playing at this level on the national stage?
Going to my first experience, I definitely was nervous.
Sure.
I feel like everybody gets nervous for every game, but I feel like my freshman year is maybe a little bit of a different nervous, just because last game of the year, national championship, going into undefeated, you want to win so bad, especially for like your fifth year seniors that come back. But definitely seeing like I've definitely learned a lot from that first game. That first game was not the best game I played. It was probably one of the worst ones I had. So I definitely learned a lot of lessons from that. And I feel like I've grown over time. And I think the experience of having those long seasons every year that I've been here,
Yep.
getting to the last game, that definitely helped me grow and mature. For them, just being like the first year they've been there, like I said earlier, they're going to be on fire all the time. They're not going to give up, like I mentioned. No matter like what the score is, like if it's close, obviously they're going to be in it. If it's not close, they're still going to be in it.
Oh, yeah.
I know they'll probably travel well too. Their fans are going to be involved in the game. But yeah, it should be a really great atmosphere. But yeah, I definitely think experience helps. But at the same time, going up against a team you've never played before or that has never been at that stage can sometimes be like unpredictable, maybe in a
Yep.
sense. Just not knowing how they're going to respond to things or like what certain things are going to draw up to run in the championship, stuff like that. So
Absolutely, man. Yeah, you talk about that fire they're going to come out with, and It certainly has, at least following you guys the last couple of years, it certainly has felt like there may have been a couple people here or there, a couple teams that come out into the field and they see you guys and kind of just like, man, like today, you know what I mean? And obviously these last few weeks have not been that. I'm certainly not expecting that Saturday. And you know exactly the challenge that's coming ahead of you. You're on it. You're on it with the answers. But I think what makes it actually a little more interesting and maybe potentially more difficult from the prep side of things is I don't think you guys had any common opponents, correct?
No, yeah, I don't think we've played anybody that they've played.
Yeah.
Well, we played Ithaca last year in the playoffs.
Okay,
but
yep.
that was last year. That's the only team I believe that we've had any sort of crossover with.
Yeah, and that makes things a little bit more interesting because I know I talked with Chuck Bitner earlier from DJFootball.com, and the Mines Harding matchup, they at least had both played Grand Valley in really close contests earlier this year, and that would probably be the one game you go back to because you're getting a great look at how they respond to different things against the same kind of front and style. But I think that certainly makes things interesting. Now, you guys aren't playing the flex bone in the championship, so it's a little bit different. But I got to imagine your game plan is, while you will have, I'm sure you boys are going to have some stuff up your sleeve, this is certainly the stage to pull it out. A lot of the same, man. Do what you do and what you do best.
Yep, it should be a fun one. Our offense should be hopefully doing what we normally do. But
Love it. Love it, man. What's the, I know it's early still this week, but what's the message to the boys right now? It's probably a lot in the same. You know what the expectation is, now go and do it.
Yep, just go do it. Do it for the guy next to you, especially the fifth-year seniors.
Yep.
They put a pause on their life to come and play another year for us, so might as well do it for them.
Hell yeah. Hell yeah. Thank you, dude. I told you I'd keep it relatively quick. I appreciate you. Been a fan of yours. Glad we could finally get you on here. I'm looking forward to tuning into that game Saturday, seeing you and Cardinal Company get going.
Appreciate you having me on here.
Absolutely, Luke. Have a good one, brother.
You too.
See ya. All right, let's close things off. Let's bring it home. Talk the NAIA scene. Only 2 games to recap, just like the other levels. But here, per usual, the constant, Schwarzler is back. What's up, fella?
Not much. Just hanging out. Just enjoying my Monday, I guess, when we're recording this after a good week of football.
Yeah.
What can I say? There's 2 teams left. We've reached the peak of the mountain here. Obviously,
you would think this episode would be a really short one. I think it's going to end up being probably one of the longest that we've had in our history. Explain that.
Yeah, there's a lot to talk about. I feel like there's just so much going on around these national title games. The NAIA, especially this year, is going to be interesting because we actually have a rematch in the title game this year.
Great. Like the odds of that happening are ridiculous.
Absolutely. But I think we could start with the defending national champions.
Absolutely.
Northwestern. Obviously, I mentioned last week, if you guys tuned in, about how Northwestern looked mortal. Not the case this time around. Northwestern was firing on all cylinders. They did a fantastic job of keeping the ball out of Georgetown's hands. Georgetown didn't. They had like 17 minutes time of possession. I think the final total was 17 minutes, 13 seconds.
Yeah.
Unfathomable. I mean, they got him off the field on defense. On offense, they just kept the ball out of Georgetown's hands. Connor McQuillan, fantastic job on the ground with 2 touchdowns to his name, 129 yards rushing. Jalen Gramstead also contributing 200 yards passing and 3 touchdowns of his own. Northwestern clearly knew what they were doing going into this game, and Georgetown just did not have a single answer the entire game.
Yeah, this defense from Georgetown, man, people are talking about, and people, including ourselves, like, this is the team that's going to give Northwestern, like, a really good shot, right? They're going to give them a very good challenge on the defensive side of the ball. Not exactly what we saw. Like, this is the Northwestern team that we kind of expected earlier on, like the last couple of rounds. We saw a lot of clips right there of Michael Story, 3 touchdowns on the day, big catch radius from the long, lengthy receiver for them. He's earned some very appropriate honors because of his performance. And if they can get another one like that out of him or another one of these, I mean, they're going to need it because of this offense that we've talked about in Keiser. But, yeah, it's – you know, you always talk about getting hot at the right time. They certainly seem to have found their rhythm offensively, and the defense stepped up too. For as much as I think it was more of an offensive game, and that's where the talking point should be, the defense obviously did step up for them in a big way.
Absolutely. And this defense of Northwestern, in years past, you always focus on the offense with Northwestern. Their defense has stepped up massively this year. In SP Plus, they're a top 5 defense and a top 4 offense, I think. Very, very balanced this year. Their defense has gotten it done. They're a bunch of playmakers. Mosier has 10 interceptions, one of their starting DBs, also brother of another Northwestern Mosier legend. That lineage continues for them. But yeah, this defense gets after it. They're extremely disciplined. They're in the right spots. That's why they get turnovers. But I think in the offensive side of the ball, you talk about rhythm. And I think that's really where Northwestern shines. Maybe not as many big chunk yardage plays as you've seen in years past with guys like Tyson Koima. Obviously, their previous quarterback was an absolute stud and just airing it out all the time. Jalen Gramstead, though, you're able to pace it out a bit better. I equate this team to the D1 fans out there. They're very similar to Oregon.
Okay.
And how they will be balanced in their attack. A guy like Bo Nix can get it done. But they get in rhythm super quickly. And once they're in rhythm, like these short passes, these medium passes, they'll break a big one for 6, and then they just kind of start the steamroll. They start to snowball. That's what I equate it to, because that's where they're at this year. When they're in rhythm, they are pretty much unstoppable.
Yeah, and you look at, I think it reflects when you look at the box score of this one. And obviously, I did get to watch, I think, just about all of this one until the last couple minutes. I think I did end up turning it off, obviously, because the game was just about all but decided. Yeah, but you look at the way they started this game, it wasn't an offensive explosion in the first or second quarter. Even in the first half, they go into halftime up 14-3. But they're scoring, it feels like, on just about every time they're touching the ball. Obviously, you have a couple giveaways, some punts, whatever, but they're scoring consistently, scoring every quarter of the game, and then 14-0 in the fourth quarter. That, to me, was like nail in the coffin, put the stamp on it, like, we are a better football team than you. And that's, I think more of that is just a confidence builder going into next week, more so than finishing off that game. Obviously, you want to put a stamp on it. You're already up 21-10. Let's give a little space and let the people know that we are like a couple scores better than this squad that we showed today. So, yeah, definitely an exclamation point for them. Always noticed, though, on their website, they never have the attendance for the games, which kind of blows. I don't know. Just for me, I always love to see, like, how many people show up to these games. So
I will say, as somebody who has played at their stadium a couple times, very good home crowd, very good home fan base. Their home stands are very big. I would say there was at least probably 2,000-3,000 people there.
32 degrees with some decent wind, but they probably still showed out.
Though, dude, those Iowans don't care about 32 degrees, dude. They're probably out there in t-shirt and shorts thinking it's brisk, Like, they're like, oh, this is great football weather. But yeah, man, Northwestern, those fans show out, and Northwestern football showed out big time. Obviously, had some question marks about how they were going to do. They put some stuff on film that teams could exploit. A team like Georgetown could exploit. Georgetown was just kind of on their heels from the get-go and couldn't really recover. Northwestern kept the pressure up and kept it rolling. Credit.
Yeah, and we talked about their defense. That offense has certainly they were put in a tough position because they had to come from behind, and not something that they've had to do a whole lot of. It's a very difficult task, especially a tall task. If you talk about the defending national champs. And by the way, not only wind, it was 23 mile per hour wind. Excuse me, with freezing temperatures already. I would love to know the feels like in Orange City on Saturday. I might have to look at that.
It is. It is not pleasant. I'll tell you, as somebody who has played in Orange City and Sioux City in the months of late October and early November, not a good time. Not a good time.
The other game might have been played in the exact opposite climate. And while it's not, you know what? Let's see. It says here 79 degrees with a 10 mile per hour wind, partly cloudy down in West Palm Beach, Florida. Keiser, the Seahawks, they got it done, man.
Absolutely, they got it done. And I do have to give credit where credit's due. College of Idaho came to play.
They did.
Holy cow! This was a back and forth game. A little bit of an ugly football game, dare I say it. College of Idaho came out and really stopped the run for Keiser, which is something that has not happened a lot. But ultimately, you look at red zone scoring for College of Idaho, 3 for 7 in the red zone. They came away with points 3 times.
Yeah.
That is the definition of bend, don't break defense. Keiser's defense ultimately putting the nail in the coffin at the end of the game too. College of Idaho driving to tie it up. Pretty much a red zone goal line stand. Extremely impressive from a Keiser team who has been rolling, but ultimately getting it done against a team that not many people expected to hang around. And I think there's something to be said for kind of taking that adversity head on and being able to come out with a win.
100%. I mean, end of the first quarter, you see there the field goal that will put Keiser ahead. Only 3-0 after the first quarter. So I think after the dust settles, it's quarter number 1, and my reaction at least was, holy shit, like this is going to be a legit football game. And not that I was expecting a blowout by any means, but this Keiser team that we've been very high on, combined with the fact that you're traveling down to Florida and playing a very, very tough away game against a quality opponent. This Yotes team has been an underdog throughout the playoffs. Like you said, they came to play, they scored 14 in the second quarter, and now you go into halftime, 20-14 for them. If you would have told them that before the game started, I think they take that as a victory. Down 6 to a team like this on their home field, you never know what happens in the second half. We do. They both dropped a goose egg in the third quarter, and they both scored in the fourth, and Keiser just ended up having just a few too many points there.
Absolutely. And I think it's a testament, too, to Keiser's defense, kind of the more underrated unit of this team for a good chunk of the season. Obviously, we mentioned Wendell Fillard in the secondary, being able to make plays, obviously, in special teams, too, returning the ball. But that front seven, that D-line especially, really showed out. They've been extremely good this year, kind of quiet, good, sneaky good. It'll be interesting to see what answers they have for Northwestern coming up, because I think that there are a few more question marks raised about this team than we previously expected.
No, I think you're right, and I think it's going to come down to the rushing attack for me, and we'll talk with Bryce Veasley here soon, but Northwestern has allowed 8 rushing touchdowns on the year. This Keiser team has become a lot more, I guess, crucial part of their offense than I think I expected. We've seen a lot of their attack coming through the air, but the combination of their two backs right now has been a critical point for the Seahawks team. If they get it done, Keiser's going to be in the football game, but if they can't get it going on the ground, I think this could actually get ugly for this Keiser team. They have to start it on the ground. If they get that going and you can start to open up your offense, they're totally going to be in this game, but it's going to be very interesting.
Absolutely. And I think it's important to note, too, that even with the run game, like you mentioned, being the strength of this Keiser team, can't quite count out their pass game. Obviously, they focus a lot on play action. They base a lot on that run game. And obviously, their tight end is their leading receiver this year, which is a common occurrence for Keiser. They rely very heavily on those big guys in the middle to create mismatches and play off of that play action game. I think there's still a window for this team to get it done if they struggle on the ground, but they will have a much taller mountain to climb if Mazinger cannot get it rolling. Obviously, we saw with the College of Idaho game.
Yeah, and only 9 completions for Keiser and for Veasley in particular. That was kind of the scary point for me. He was 9 for 22. Thankfully, none of those incompletions were actually interceptions, which is, I think, the saving point for this Keiser team. That kept them ahead and kept them at least in a safe enough margin ahead of this College of Idaho squad. But yeah, 9 of 22 on Monday will not get it done for you. They're going to have to be a little bit more efficient through the air, especially when you talk about the play action, dialing those up and getting kind of those better looks. But you're right, the tight end's going to be a big part of that. And that live and die on play action, your tight end is going to be a huge part of any kind of scheme that revolves around that.
Absolutely. Yeah. And I think the key for Keiser going into the national championship is how can you stay disciplined in your gaps, and how can you get this Northwestern offense out of rhythm, and on the offensive side of the ball, how can you make them undisciplined? How can you get them out of rhythm? That sort of thing.
Yeah, man. Playing on a Monday.
Yeah.
The hell's up
Monday.
with that?
Noon, Durham, North Carolina. I don't know. I mean, the D1 national title's on a Monday, isn't it?
That's a great question.
I'm pretty sure it is. I mean, either way, like Monday's not the worst day, I guess. And they're doing it at noon, so you're not competing with like primetime slots. But I do recall this game is going to be on ESPN, at the very least ESPN Plus, which is great. I love seeing these big games on that stage. But yeah, Monday is kind of weird, but they get an extra couple days to enjoy whatever goes on in Durham, North Carolina. I'm going
to say, I don't know exactly what that is, to be honest with you.
Yeah. I don't know. Is that where Duke is?
You know what? Hold on.
I think that's where Duke is. I don't know. I mean, I can't say that they're going to go party because that's probably not a good idea.
Oh yeah, it is.
But hey, maybe to the victor, you get to go on a big boy campus and
be
throw down a little bit.
Honorary Blue Devil for the night or something. I wonder what that looks like, because obviously neutral site game is not like you're going to your hometown watering hole or something like that afterwards. But Bryce told me that they're leaving Thursday, so that's going to be quite the stay there in Durham. And I'd imagine those guys are trying to get home after, win or loss. They're going to try and get out of there, man.
Yeah. Hopefully they don't make too bad of decisions, but I don't know. it's out of my hands. So obviously it comes down to them if they want to throw the game away or not. But there's a lot to look forward to in this national title game. Yeah. I think you look at Northwestern on the offensive side of the ball, they get a lot done. Again, very efficient. I think for Keiser, the key is just going to be pounding the rock, being able to match what Northwestern brings to the table on offense. Obviously, they've been able to match most offenses they've played. Keiser's the number 1 ranked SP plus offense in the NAIA currently. So they've looked really good, but obviously Northwestern has proven they could go blow for blow with anybody. That front 7 on Keiser's defense is going to have to come play. I think Wendell Fillard is going to have to make some plays, which we've seen him do many times. He's an incredible athlete. And for Northwestern, how can you get Connor McQuillan going? Because obviously he's a dual threat, I guess, running back, like Jalen Grimstad's a dual threat quarterback. Connor McQuillan has a couple hundred receiving yards as well. Having those dynamic pieces in the backfield causes so many problems defensively. Because if you go man, somebody's going to be leaking down the sideline, or Grimstad's going to break one. If you go zone, they're going to be able to pick you apart, and Grimstad's going to be able to read it properly. Keiser's going to have to be super physical. They're going to have to be in Northwestern's face. They're going to have to get pressure if they want to win this game, ultimately.
It is funny. This game, out of the 3 of them, between D2, D3, and NAIA, actually has the least amount of question marks about the matchup, even though these are 2 pretty different teams than we saw a year ago, and we've mentioned that, obviously. But you look at a matchup like Mannn's and Harding, and there are so many things that are up in the air. 2 different offenses that couldn't look more polarizingly opposite. Teams like North Central, who we assumed that was going to be back, but now they have Cortland, this team and this offense that has exploded, and nobody knows how the Red Dragons are going to match up, because there hasn't been a team from New York that's been in the D3 National Championship in 30-plus years. So we've got a lot more parity in the other levels. Mm-hmm. NAIA consistent, solid. These 2 teams certainly have deserved their right to be back there. I'm excited, brother. Thank you for coming on here. I told you it'd be more of a brief one tonight, but nonetheless, I appreciate the insight. I'm excited. Do you have a pick for who should we expect to take it all this year? Yeah.
So here's the thing.
Okay.
Momentum favors Northwestern. Experience probably favors Northwestern a bit. I talked on the NAIA F-ball show before this, which you should check out if you haven't already, for NAIA football. Talked with Corey. Corey picked Northwestern for all of the reasons you'd expect, dynamic attack on offense, disciplined defense. I unfortunately have narratives to push. And if you remember last week, right, it's very high on this Keiser team.
Yes. Oh, that clip made its way around the channels a little bit.
I saw the shares on that on Instagram, which I already knew was just like, oh boy, there's some locker rooms looking at this video. Give me Keiser in a super close game, because I am not backing off my pick.
I love it.
And yeah, I might be a little bitter about getting my ass kicked by Northwestern for 4 years, but that totally doesn't play into it at all.
No,
not at all. So if you're, an angry Iowan out there, sorry, this is just how it goes.
Stand on it.
I have agendas, I'm going to stand on that. So yeah, I will say I'm taking Keiser. I expect it to be a great game. Also, quick shout out D3 level to Zaya Owens, Cortland linebacker, number 44, Dakota Wesleyan transfer. I played with him for a couple of years. He's the homie. Yeah, he's been playing on their defense. He's been looking really good. Obviously, there's a picture of him circulating, D3 and Cortland socials of him sitting on the field in disbelief they made it to the Natty. So
that's pretty
excited to watch him ball out. I'll be watching that game for sure.
Sweet. Yeah, we've talked a lot about their offense with guys like Boys and Lapp and Alfano St. John and Burgess and those guys that have been filling up the box scores. But that defense for them they got their work cut out for them on Saturday.
Yeah, no kidding.
It'll be tough, but I love it, dude. Hey, stand on it. You're gonna finish with that. I love it, dude. Thank you very much, man. I'm excited to tune in. It won't be, like I said, till Monday, so we'll get some pretty recent reactions coming off of that one.
Yeah, no kidding. It should be a good one.
Sweet. Thank you, Matt.
Yeah,
I'll see you,
take
brother.
it easy.
Yeah, you too, man. Joining the show tonight, the man under center for a Seahawk offense that has scored the 6th most points in the NAIA this year. How about that stat? It's Bryce Veasley. What's up, man?
Kobe, appreciate you having me on the show, on the platform, man. D1R Rejects.
Hell yeah.
Super fitting for my story. I'm glad to be here.
Hell yeah, man. You and I talked a little bit before this about how some people take offense to the name. You're a perfect example of the quality and the benefit of what that name means. There's so many negative connotations with that. For a guy like you to have been in a couple spots and to really find your place, find your calling on this offense, man, dude, what a full circle moment for you to be playing meaningful football right now in December. And not only that, to be the man for this offense too. It's got to be exciting.
Super exciting, Kobe. I'm still trying to take it all in. This being my first time on the field, starting, leading the team.
Yeah.
Since the national championship or since the high school state championship run, this is great, man. I'm ready to take on the Northwestern Red Raiders.
Hell yeah, dude. And it's going to be a fun one. We've watched a lot of we talked a lot about them, obviously, coming off the run they had last year. They've certainly been tested this year, but let's talk about your squad before we talk about those guys over there. Couple early losses early on to some quality Division II opponents of the Austin State team that we saw make it to the quarterfinals. So now you look back on a couple of those games and you're like, man, we're playing some really tough competition, but whether it's D2, D1, NAIA, still losses. So to have that kind of shaky start to the year, like I said, whether it was against really tough opponents or not, was it ever a challenge to keep the faith together in those guys?
So with us, man, it was blood in the water from the jump. Our scheduling, we all understand how we schedule at NAIA. So the two tough D2 opponents early on in the season, it kind of just made us tighter as a unit.
Hell yeah. I like that. And that can go one of two ways, right? Like it's either going to do that to you, make those boys like come together, or it's going to do this and split y'all apart. And I'm glad that it was the former of the two of those. But you kind of alluded to it earlier. Talk about this season for you, because I know the past couple years out of high school, like you said, bouncing around a couple, the Bowling Green, Duquesne, and now landing here last year, did play a good amount of snaps. But like you said, you weren't the starter. Now, coming into this year, being named the guy and having that responsibility and having that role coming into the season, knowing what was ahead of you, what has your mindset been like? And I would imagine it's been a pretty fun year after a couple of those games early on.
Yeah, it's definitely been a monkey on my back, because I just wanted to prove to myself and, everyone else that, I could be the starting quarterback and lead a team to a championship. And so for me right now, it's just, like I said, I'm taking it all in day by day, and we're going to roll into the national championship ready to ball.
Hell yeah. Only way to do it. That's it. Coming from Duquesne, though, and making that jump down, I'm curious, what were your expectations like of this Keiser team who you knew had been good in the past, but, what were your expectations coming in, and were they exceeded or just about spot on?
Well, my expectations are always been the same, especially when I'm able to, influence and be able to be a part of the culture of the team.
Yeah.
So it's just been my expectations have actually just been exceeded for, what we've been able to accomplish. We set the standard and the goal, and we executed it, and so now we're preparing for that, for what we talked about.
And you're a big part of that. What's your leadership come like? Obviously, last year, coming in, still contributing to the team in a lot of big ways, but filling a lot larger shoes this year. How has your leadership with those guys developed? And I'd imagine it's a big piece of it, too, is now you have a built-up rapport with a lot of those guys. You've been there for a year. You've gone through the camp, the spring ball, all those things that make a unit as close as it is. What's your leadership and those kind of attributes look like now as compared to maybe a year ago?
So this year, like the word that me and my coach and the team we talked about is elite. So being elite to me, that's just the little things: being on time, being that guy that's there every day, being reliable, and that's what my leadership has been.
That's it, dude. If you can't do that, you can't do anything. If you can't be counted on as a leader, man, that's the start of everything. But coming from those two previous spots, what did you bring to this team that maybe you've learned at some of your previous spots playing ball with a lot of really talented guys and talented coaching staffs? I wanted to pick your brain on that if anything stood out.
Just the routine, man. Coach Social already had a great idea of it at Keiser, and me just bringing it in, being able to see it at different schools, different D1s. Me going to Keiser, the team was just able to basically I was able to be a leader because I lived it. I lived being at a D1. So for me to go to an NAIA school and be a D1 guy and be a ball player, everybody was able to latch on, and they
Absolutely.
can see success in it.
I hear you. Now, touching on that Northwestern team, we're gonna talk about it a little bit. It's gonna be a fun one Saturday. Really great offense that you guys have been posing all year, but heavy favorite. They have been, even coming into this year, obviously after winning it last year, they've been all but perfect, but not immortal. We've seen, especially the last couple of weeks, they've had some really good challenges from teams like Georgetown or a team like Dort over there a couple rounds ago. But talk about, from your perspective, you've watched these guys, without getting into the X's and O's and the nitty-gritty of it, what do you guys have to do to come out on top?
Execute our offense, man. Just come out, make the plays. When there's plays to be made, we have to make those plays. When, whether that's me, Andrew Burnett, Jaden Meisinger, or DeAndre Golden, our tight end, we just have to make plays. And that's what we've been doing all season. So on a big platform, this should be great for all of us.
You talk about a couple of those guys in the offensive backfield there. This Red Raider team's only allowed 8 touchdowns on the ground throughout the entire season. I'd have to imagine those boys back there are excited for the challenge this Saturday.
I'm sure they are. We are too.
Hell yeah. I'm pumped, dude. It's going to be a pretty sweet. Well, where's the game at again? Remind me.
So the game is going to be in North Carolina.
Yeah.
And Riley, I want to say. Or no, check. It's in Durham. Durham,
that's
Carolina.
right. That's right.
From North Carolina.
Yeah. Neutral site, a little bit different.
12 o'clock kickoff. Last year, I want to say it was at 1.
Okay.
But we'll be ready. We'll be ready to roll.
You guys flying in?
Well, yeah, we just found out the news. We're flying in. I think we're going to be leaving West Palm Beach Thursday night and getting into Durham.
Yeah. I'm always interested to hear how that, because you talk about the routine and kind of the setup and everything like that, how much that gets you guys out of your routine maybe or not, and how are you adapting to going on the road and making a little bit of a elongated stay over there?
So last year, it's a funny fact. We were actually a road team. We were known as the Road Warriors. So,
okay.
So this year, for us to have 3 home games and be at home for the championship to go on the road, I don't think it'll be an issue.
No.
Nah.
What has stood out to you about this squad, maybe compared to last year, whether it be just offense or the team in general?
The team in general. And then, of course, I'm the starter now, so I just think my effect on the game and on how things roll, I'm going to bet on myself every time.
Hell yeah. What is, going through, looking back at this year for you guys, and I got a chance to tune into a couple of games, but admittedly, obviously not every one, these last couple weeks for sure. Is there a game that stands out to you over the course of this year where you felt like maybe as a starter or just as a team in general, you guys really stepped up to the challenge? I know probably early on, maybe that St. Thomas matchup had to have been one where really tight game against a quality opponent that you guys ended up seeing later on in the playoffs. That probably, for me, I'm curious to pick your brain, does that feel like a spot where you guys really elevated and kind of came into your own?
Yeah, I would agree. That St. Thomas game, it was that first game. It was definitely a dogfight. For them to come to our home field and get up early on us. Actually, 2 games they got up on us, and for us to stay composed and execute and just be us, and that's what we did.
Absolutely, dude. Sweet. We're rifling through all this shit, man. I love it. But yeah, I mean that's most of what I have for you. I mean, just off the rip, talking about Saturday, you and the boys got to be just elated and got to have a lot of confidence too, I'd imagine, huh?
Yeah, super confident, man. This matchup, we kind of been manifesting it. It's the rematch from last year.
Yeah.
So for us, it's just been blood in the water the whole year. We've been talking about it, and now we're here. So we're gonna be ready.
That's right, man. To go that far and to have it shake out the exact same way is kind of ridiculous, but it happens for good reason. You guys are both playing some really good ball, so there's not really a better matchup to be had. We've seen all the ball be played up to this point.
Yes, sir.
Hell yeah. Well, all right, dude. Well, I told you I'd keep it relatively quick with you tonight. I appreciate you hopping on here with me for a little bit. What are your plans after this year? What's the move for Bryce after hopefully a win on Saturday?
Right now, we're worrying about Bryce has to get a
good answer.
National
Good
championship.
answer. Yes.
Yeah. Bryce has to get a championship. That's like the only thing on my plate for the rest of this year, and that's what I'm sticking to.
Hell yeah. Don't let anyone bait you out of a different answer. Good fucking answer, Bob. I love it. I love it.
Yes,
dude.
sir.
Thank you for joining me, my man. I appreciate it. Good luck to you on Saturday. Me and the boys will be tuning in.
Let's go.
Absolutely.
See you then, Kobe. Appreciate you having me.
Yes, sir.